So I have been in a writing slump for a long time, and now that I'm finally crawling my way back out of it, I'm realizing that I'm putting a lot of pressure on my writing, on the process, on the books that I'm working on, and it's becoming a little overwhelming. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about how I'm dealing with it. Hello, word nerds! Happy Tuesday! Today we are talking about putting pressure on your writing because this is something I have been doing a lot of recently. As I finally started to get into writing again and think about my next steps in my career, it feels like every word I write needs to be perfect and just needs to make the most of my time. And we all know that none of that is going to go smoothly. No good can come of putting that much pressure on your writing, and it tends to just suck all of the joy out of the whole process. I know for me, a lot of this pressure is coming from a simultaneous need to make all of these really big decisions about my entire writing career as I'm writing a book and trying to decide what I'm going to be publishing. But putting pressure on your writing is a pretty universal experience for so many writers. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how you deal with that pressure, ways that you can kind of find the joy in the writing process again, realizing that you're not going to make your book perfect on the first try and that every minute spent writing doesn't need to be spent perfectly. No one's keeping score. And I mean, it can be so easy to say, just enjoy the process, focus on writing the best story you can, and everything else is going to fall into place. More often than not, it does not play out like that. It is just a reality of writing. Sometimes the process is hard. Sometimes there's just too much going on in your brain to tell exactly the story you want to tell. And by sometimes, I kind of mean most times, but that is all totally okay. So let's dig into taking off the pressure, enjoying the process, and actually telling the best stories that we can. Because in the long run, and I know this is so much more easily said than done, really even saying it kind of reverses the effect of it, but taking the pressure off does help your writing in the long run. Not only are you less likely to burn out, but the story that you tell is going to be full of so many more nuances and just little pieces of you that make the story unique and special and let you enjoy actually writing it. One thing that's been working really well for me is writing on paper as I am drafting and brainstorming and doing versions of the story that the logical part of my brain knows is not going to be exactly how the story is going to go, that I'm just playing around and trying to figure it out. By writing things out with pen and paper, your brain is going to have to acknowledge that this is not the final form of this book. There is no way you are going to be able to send this to anyone in order for them to judge it or try to publish it or any of the things we tell ourselves might somehow happen. You are going to have to type this out at some point. And when you do that, you're going to be able to make all sorts of changes. So for now, you just want to write and brainstorm and tell as much of your story as you already know. Let yourself make mistakes and scribble in the margins. It's going to be fun. You're going to feel a little more like an old school novelist, which is always kind of neat. And the pressure is going to be a little bit less because it's not going to be perfect. And that's great. And let's face it, so many of us just have countless notebooks sitting around our house waiting to be used. So write your story, write it for yourself because nobody else is going to read this unless you actually mail it to them, which you definitely should not do. Next up, if you have a little bit of warm-up time before your actual writing session, consider writing a scene just for you. This is going to involve your characters in your world, but have nothing to do with the plot. Your brain is just going to have to acknowledge that whatever you write here is not going into this book. It's kind of a preemptive kill your darlings. This is a story where your characters are just doing something ridiculous or boring even. They're hanging out, or they've won the lottery, or they're going bowling. It's going to let you get to know your characters a little bit better and take the pressure off that writing session because this story is really just for you or isn't a story, it's just an exercise. And that can be a lot of fun, it can be so freeing, and it's going to help your writing in the long run. Or if you don't want to completely go in that direction where the scene just has no value to what you're working on, you can try something a little bit different, like taking the last scene you wrote and making some kind of different decision. Maybe your characters do something different. Maybe there's an element that you add that wasn't there before. And then you just retry that scene, play it through again, see what's different, see how that makes a difference to the overall plot. And in the process, you kind of have to acknowledge that there is no one form of this story. You have to make decisions. They're not always going to be the right decisions, and it's okay to go back and change it whenever you're ready. And my final tip for now on taking the pressure off of your writing is to try and find a first reader. This is a fellow writer who is going to read the absolute first draft of your book. It's probably a writing friend that you trust a lot who's in a similar position so that you'll be able to read their first chapters as they're coming out. You kind of switch back and forth. You're going to talk about this ahead of time, make sure you're both on the same page in terms of what you're looking for. But basically, you're going to know that someone else is going to have a second set of eyes on this. All of the pressure isn't on you to make a perfect series of decisions as you are plotting the first draft of this book. If something isn't working or you've created a plot hole, you're going to have someone else who can help you find it early so that you can fix it and move on rather than just wait until you have an entire draft and send it out into the world and then have to essentially start over. which isn't actually something that happens, but it's something I'm always terrified is going to happen, where I'm going to spend all of this time on a first draft. There's going to be a mistake in chapter 1 that just snowballs throughout the rest of the book, and I'm going to have wasted all this time. It doesn't happen, but it's a fear. And having a first reader friend where you're writing maybe one chapter, maybe a few, and just sending them back and forth as you're writing them not only gives you some extra accountability, but there's also some extra camaraderie where you aren't the only person trying to make this plot make sense. You aren't the only one trying to make sure your character arcs are all flowing together like they're supposed to. It's not all on you, and that can be a huge relief. And when you're first talking to a friend or fellow writer, even if you don't know them, about setting up this kind of relationship, make sure you are super honest about the kind of feedback you're looking for. Maybe you want someone to do what I was just talking about and help you find plot holes and figure out problems before they get too serious. Or maybe you just need some encouragement and for someone to point out all of the things you're doing well so you stay on track with this particular project and keep writing and keep feeling excited about the project. Everyone's going to need something a little bit different. Maybe you and your first reader aren't going to need the same things, but as long as you're aware of how you can help them and how they can help you, it should work pretty smoothly. There are going to be instances where you trade a couple of chapters back and forth, realize it's not a good fit, and just have to start over. That's totally okay. Having these different kinds of relationships are how I've met some of my favorite writing people. So even if it's not a perfect fit right from the get-go, it is worth putting in the time and finding those people so your writing process in the long run is going to go that much more smoothly. So there you have it. These are some of the ways I am currently working through taking the pressure off of my own writing process. Hopefully some of this was helpful. It is very much a learning experience because this is hard, but so many of us go through it. If you've been through it before, absolutely let me know in the comments, maybe some of the things that have worked for you or some of the particular struggles you're up against. I could totally see myself doing an entire other version of this video with your advice. So if you have any, let me know. Of course, don't forget to join us on Sunday for our next live chat, which is going to be at 7:30 Eastern. And in the meantime, happy reading, happy writing, and I'll see you next time.